Okay, I'd like to talk about now about how you can transition and how others have transitioned. And I think a lot of this may reinforce what Dr. McLaughlin was just talking about, what Mike was just talking about. So the first thing that I suggest is, before you go down this road of transitioning, is to think, are there things that I can do to be happy clinically where maybe, hey, um, I don't have to do a non-clinical job. All right. And what I advise is this requires serious introspection. Just like what Mike did when you saw his chart that he talked about schedule control and money and all the kind of things that went into his job satisfaction, intellectual challenge, whatnot. You want to take a hard look at what you're doing and why you want to transition. And I think what you'll find is that for some people, you can actually fix the problem. Okay? So if you have too much call, if the call is brutal, well, if you could have the same practice but not have that much call, would you still want to do it? I was talking to a 66-year-old neonatologist last night. She does 24-hour shifts, and it usually turns into about 27 hours as she talks about, you have to clean up at the end of your shift. She's 66 years old. I said, God bless you. I don't know how you do that. You need to negotiate a better deal, though, because this is ridiculous. It's just too hard on the body. If you could do that with 10-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts, something like that, would you still want to do it as much as you're doing? Maybe. I don't know. Burnout, too many hours, too many patients. Can you get a different situation where you don't have to see that many patients? You have fewer patients. You have longer appointments with your patients. Can you get a situation like that? Not enough family time. Too many hours. Whatever you want to have here. And what we have found, and it's one of our subspecialties actually, is that physicians can be really awful negotiators. Some physicians are good negotiators. They're generally very successful and happy. Others, they're just not into it. And I think learning how to negotiate could be absolutely critical in your own happiness. And I know I have examples of physicians that really have negotiated wonderfully to make their clinical practice what they need it to be, what they want it to be. I have a friend who was a very successful urologist. He was thinking about retiring. He was thinking about doing something else. And he loved the mountains and whatnot. And he got a job working 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off out in a resort area in the Rockies. And he's happy as a pig in mud. I have a client who's a neurologist who works 6 weeks on and 6 weeks off. He does expert witness work to make money on the side, and he makes a lot of it like that. So there are things that you can do. I have a client who's an expert witness client who's an emergency medicine physician, and he negotiated no more overnight shifts. Okay, now would that make a difference if you're an emergency medicine physician, not having to do the graveyard shift anymore? I think it might. And if you can learn how to negotiate, I'm not plugging it, but we have a course on negotiating for physicians. That can be enormously helpful in getting a better getting a better gig, and you may be able to fix some of the problems that you have. Okay, if it's fighting with insurance companies, I don't have this on the slide, but if it's fighting with insurance companies, well, maybe you go to a concierge practice. Maybe you go for a fee-for-service practice. I have a friend, a client who's a gastroenterologist in New York. He takes no insurance. He's a very happy man. He does a lot of expert witness work. I mentor and train a lot of expert witnesses, and he makes money from the fee-for-service and then from the expert witness stuff. So you may be able to fix things clinically. Now, one of the negotiation strategies that you kind of need to be prepared to pull, if you want to get your employer to have flexibility when they say that they wouldn't or they don't do it for anybody else, the short way, the easy way to get flexibility is to get an offer from somebody else that's a better offer, even if you don't really want to go there. And then you say, look, I want X, Y, and Z. It's either more money, it's either different conditions, it's this, that. I don't know what it is that you're looking for that you're going to get. And if they don't give it to you, say, fine, I'm going to go someplace else because they're going to give it to me. And that's how to negotiate. And that's what a lot of physicians really don't do, or they don't do well. So I do think it's an important part of the equation to think about, can you fix things clinically? Now, money. Because you are No, I won't say that. Because a lot of physicians are poor negotiators. A lot of physicians get screwed when it comes to money. Okay, and we've seen this again and again and again. I got a call from a obstetrician, very high powered, Ivy League, the whole 9 yards, and she was working 70 to 80 hours a week, and she was getting $225,000 a year. And I told her, doctor, you don't just need help, you need an intervention. It was crazy. I had another doctor client of mine, another lousy negotiator. She was at an Ivy League medical school. She was a professor and she was a pediatric neurologist. She was getting $100,000 a year. Okay, there's absolutely no reason for anything like that. You have to be able to negotiate. I have other clients that I have clients that do emergency medicine. Some make $500,000 a year, some make $200,000 a year. Obviously, it's going to matter where you are in the country and whatnot, but it's the negotiation skills, the standing up for yourselves. So if it's a matter of money, and I think you may be able to fix that. The other thing that we get a lot with our clients is boredom, and it's scary to me as somebody who's a patient and not a doctor. So we had a speaker once. He was a pediatric emergency medicine physician. He was describing to us, I work in the ER. He was a pharmaceutical physician speaking for us. I still do it, but the reason I went into pharmaceutical is it got boring. And he gave the example of he's given the speech about 10,000 times in his career up to that point, where he explained to parents why he can't just put any kid with a cough on an antibiotic. And he said, somewhere after the 5,000th or 6,000th time that I gave that talk, it really wasn't interesting to me anymore. And it's understandable. It can get repetitive. It can get very rote. All right. So one way to kind of kill two birds with one stone and make more money and have less boredom is to try cutting down your clinical practice or keeping the same amount of clinical practice that you have and adding a side gig, right? Adding something on the side. And one of the things that Seek specializes in is supplemental income for physicians. All right. So we have another course that we typically do as a pre-conference as well for our non-clinical careers conference on how to supplement your income with lucrative home-based work. And here on this slide, we have a bunch of examples of this. Expert witnessing. In expert witnessing, in a nutshell, you can make $500 to $1,000 an hour sitting home reviewing records most of the time. And the vast majority of the time, even when you're working for the plaintiff, you're getting a defendant doctor off the hook if it's a malpractice case. And a lot of times the cases have nothing to do with malpractice anyhow. All right. So, if it's just a question of money and boredom, and you might have any interest in being an expert witness, look into it because it can be highly lucrative. A successful physician expert witness working part-time, if you make $500 an hour and you do that, 4 hours a week, that's $100,000. All right. Okay. If you did it 1 day a week, that's $200,000. We have clients routinely doing this a few hours a week, making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year. We have several clients making over $1 million a year part-time. So there is money in that. And one of the things that people like about the expert witnessing is they learn a tremendous amount of medicine. It's challenging and it's something different. And I think that's what people really, really like because medicine can get very rote and repetitive. IMEs, independent medical examinations, you can get $1,500 on average and up to, it's an expert witness assignment where you actually see the person. So somebody got in a car crash, and the treating doctor writes up one thing, or a doctor that the plaintiff's lawyer sent the patient to, the plaintiff to, writes up another thing. The insurance company, the defense lawyers, they want their own doctor to look at this person. You look at the person, you write up a report, and that's basically it. You get the money. No fee schedules, nothing. It's fee for service, right? Kind of nice. Very little overhead. Independent medical examinations. Doctors can make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year doing that on the side. Doctors that are retired or semi-retired can do that, can do a lot of IMEs. File reviews. This is where you're doing contract work for either disability or utilization review cases. Those typically make $85, $120, sometimes up to $250 an hour or more doing that work. Okay, it's a way to supplement your income. And the nice thing about the file reviews, it's gaining experience and testing the waters in case you want to go work for a utilization review company, become a physician advisor, or work for a health insurance company. Consulting, we have a whole course on consulting. We have, by the way, we have a course on expert witnessing, IMEs, file review. We have a whole course on consulting as well. And as a consultant, you use your expertise and experience to solve problems for clients. It's a wonderful field. There's no limit to the amount of money you can work. It's interesting. It's creative. You do have to be a hustler. I mean that in a good way. I mean, you have to be a go-getter, I guess I'll use that word, to go out there and kind of create this stuff and get clients and whatnot, but there's no reason you can't do that. Writing and freelance writing. Those people typically make $85 to $125 an hour for interesting work that's really not high stress. Okay? You can do it from anywhere. We've dealt with tons of physicians that are writers. Obviously, if you can write, mass market fiction like Dr. Michael Palmer that we talked about earlier and Tess Gerritsen, there's no limit to what you can make. And the nice thing is it alleviates the boredom and you can make more money. So like the slide, money and boredom. Inventing, right? There's several physicians that have made billions inventing. There's millions to make inventing, right? Plus it's an interesting challenge and you're doing good for society by inventing medical devices and things like that. You can teach on the side. Probably not the most lucrative thing you can do, but it's interesting and it's fun. You can do life care planning. Life care planning is a subset of expert witnessing where you give an opinion on what's it going to take financially, what's it going to cost to take care of a patient, somebody that was injured in an accident for the rest of their life. And it's talking about not only medical care, pharmaceuticals, durable goods, architectural adjustments to a home, things like that. And a physician could get $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 for a life care plan. Generally no heavy lifting, not very controversial. You could start a business on the side, and we talked about that earlier. So I do think that there are options out there beyond non-clinical careers, either full-time or part-time. If there are certain things, if it's a question of boredom and money, one of the things that you can consider is taking a side gig or cutting back a little bit on your practice and taking a side gig. And these are just some of the options that are open to you and some of the things that Seek actually has expertise in. All right, now I realize sometimes it just can't be fixed, and that's okay. And that's why we're here, because you do have options. And in many years of helping physicians with non-clinical careers, these are the types of things that I've seen and heard a lot. I'm allergic to patients. I hate patients. I can't stand seeing them anymore, right? I just don't like being a doctor. There's nothing that can be fixed. I am done, right? How many people are in this situation? I only became a doctor to please my family. That's what was expected of me. Mom was a doctor. Dad was a doctor. I was supposed to be a doctor. Only one little problem. I'm not happy. I don't want to be a doctor. Nobody ever really asked me. Or, man, I'm really smart. I did really well in school. Doesn't that mean I have to be a doctor because society needs them? And then, of course, there's the biggest lie. And I've seen this again and again and again from the people that have been through our course, the people that I've spoken to, is where everybody tells you as you're going along and along this, when you're on the gerbil wheel here and you can't get off of it, is don't worry. It'll get better after medical school. Don't worry. It'll get better after your internship. Don't worry. It'll get better after your residency. It'll get better after your fellowship. Don't worry, it'll get better when you make partner. And you know what? A lot of times it doesn't and it can't, because the things that you don't like about medicine can't be fixed. Like the things that we're talking about here. You just don't like treating patients, which is fair enough. I just don't like being a doctor. I'd rather do something else. I don't like the practice of medicine and what it's become. So, my step 2 is understanding that you have to accept that this is your life, you only get one life, and you have a right to be happy. You've been taking care of everybody else for as many other years as you've been on life, and you've paid your dues, and more so. It is perfectly acceptable for you to find something that's going to make you happy, and not just make your parents happy, not make your spouse happy, not make your kids happy. You can do something for you, and what we're trying to teach you is that taking a non-clinical job, in many cases, is a step up, not a step down. And you have more potential for financial success in the non-clinical world than you do in the clinical world. So I think it's a situation where you can really have your cake and eat it too. But you have to realize, stop being a martyr. It's It's your life, and you have a right to be happy. And if you're happy, you're going to be more productive, you're going to be more successful, and it's going to be better for everybody around you. And most importantly, it's going to be better for yourself. Okay, what's the next step? Figuring out what you want to do when you grow up, right? Which is going to be the hardest, most time-consuming part. This is what Mike called, Dr. McLaughlin called, exploration. Same thing. And you're going to have to do your homework. This is a big choice that you're doing, that you're making, what field you want to get into, because you have a ton of choices as a doctor, which is what we talked about at the beginning, and I hope you're really, believing this and recognizing this. So you're going to have to explore and really find out what's the best fit for you. You're going to ask yourself the hard questions. What am I going to be doing on a day-to-day basis? You need to understand what you're getting yourself into. You want to talk to physicians that will be candid about exactly what's going on in that field, right? That's what our C conference is all about. You can actually talk to these people. You can meet them. They're going to tell you exactly what the heck's going on, what your possibilities for advancement are, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, what's the good, the bad, and the ugly. You want to talk to colleagues in the field. You want to do your networking to do that. You want to research the heck out of it to make an informed decision as to what's best for you. This is what Mike did when he decided to get into medical communications, and the results have been absolutely outstanding because he found something that was perfect for him, a doctor who likes to write. Okay? Perfect fit for him. And you have to find your own perfect sweet spot. Okay? And again, as the advice that I gave you in the Lost Talk, don't go with any preconceived notions. Oh, I can never work for a pharmaceutical company. They charge too much money. I wouldn't do that. Now, that may end up where you end up. It's okay. But don't go in with a preconceived any biases. Now, deadlines. We talked about this earlier. We're going to close up today with showing you some examples of action plans. And what we want you to do as you're going through this course is to write down and to take notes and to come up with a series of things that you are going to do to get from where you are now to where you want to be. All right, and that's the action plan, right? Because if you take this class and you just look at it and you soak it all in and you're nodding to some of it, you might be shaking your head to some of it, and you're miserable and you want to do something else, but you never do anything about it, you wasted your time. You wasted your money, right? And the way to make this happen is to treat it seriously. We'll talk about that. To give yourself deadlines, to have a plan, and to stick to the plan. And if you can do those things, you will likely have a successful transition. Because you know what? We're going to talk about this. This ain't rocket science. If you guys put your mind to it, all of you can have a successful transition. I'm confident of that. Step 4, make it happen. So as a physician, you have all kinds of impediments to making a successful career transition. There's fear. There's potentially there could be pushback from your family. There could be financial considerations. There's all kinds of problems that you might have, right? But there is no doubt in my mind that the most common number one impediment, to a successful career transition is inertia. You are stuck on the damn dribble wheel. Okay, I can't tell you the number of people that they hire us to do a consult, they pay us, and they never get back to us because they're so busy, but they hired us because they were burnt out and they were too busy. They can't get back to us because they're too busy, right? So what you need to do is you need to Goya. What is Goya? That's an acronym. And it comes from my partner Steve discovered it many years ago when he was a plaintiff's lawyer and he went to an insurance company, and up on the wall they had a big list. They had the Goya list, and he had said to the adjusters, what the heck's this Goya list thing? He says, Goya, that's telling our adjusters to settle cases. They need to get stuff done. Well, what's the word Goya? Is that like Spanish or something? He says, no, it's an acronym. Well, an acronym for what? Well, it's get off your ASS. That's what it is. And if you want to make this happen, you got to suck it up and you got to get off your glutes and you got to make it happen. And you will be able to make it happen. So, transition is hard work. The harder you work, and you guys are all hard workers, but you got to work for yourself now and not for somebody else, the better, the faster your result will be. No question about it. The more you put into this, the more you're going to get out, and the faster it's going to come out. Because it's not going to happen on its. I mean, it could happen on its own, but it's not likely it's going to happen on its own, right? And what I recommend to people is to dedicate at least an hour a week to transition. Better to do it an hour a day, right? Better to do it, as much as you can to do it, because if you treat it seriously, like Dr. McLaughlin did when he's talking about his transition, you're likely to have a much better result, a much faster result, and a result that's going to have longer lasting effect and not something you're going to go into and not like it, right? So you just need to Goya, all right? And, what I try to tell people when I teach them expert witnessing, and a lot of my clients are medical doctors, maybe around half, and there's all kinds of other things, engineers, accountants, and everything else that we teach. But you're very, very accomplished as a physician. It's amazing what you guys have all accomplished, and how hard you had to work to get to where you are today. And what I tell people is, if you gave me 1/100th or even 1/1000th of the seriousness and the effort and the work that you put into learning how to become a physician, if you gave that to me to learn how to become an expert witness, I could make you a rock star. Because there is some stuff that you need to learn. There's some important stuff that you need to learn, but it's nowhere near as important. It's nowhere near as hard to learn, or as difficult, or as time-consuming to learn as what it took you to become a medical doctor, going through medical school and, residency and all this other stuff, which is basically, that's a crazy amount of work. So if you take your transition seriously, and developing your job search skills seriously, and developing your research seriously, and you just give me 1/100th of what it took you to get through residency or medical school, you'll be just fine. But if you think it's just going to happen on its own, and you're going to get some divine intervention, and they're going to drop the perfect job on you, I don't think you're being realistic. So you need to break into whatever reservoir you have of energy, take it seriously, and make the damn thing happen. It's in your hands, right? There's things that you can control. There's things that you can't control. You can't control what Congress is going to do with health insurance. You can't control that. You can't control what the weather's going to be like, right? But you can control how hard you work at your job transition, how hard you work at researching what the best fits are for you, how hard you work at networking, how hard you work on your resume. Mandy's going to talk about your resume and your brand later. All these things you can control. So, Goya, make it happen. And the physicians that do this is the hardest step, because you have to find the time to do it. You have to make the time to do it, because you guys are all crazy busy. But the payoff will be extraordinary, because after you make the switch, finding time to do stuff for yourself, I guarantee is not going to be a problem anymore. And that's one of the biggest reasons people go into non-clinical careers, because you're going to have a life again, and it's going to be great. Going to be absolutely great. I got to tell you something. All the hundreds of doctors that we've had speak for us on non-clinical careers, you ask them their biggest regret, they all tell you the same thing. And I've heard it again and again and again. Do you have any regrets about going into pharma? Do you have any regrets to go to this insurance company? Any regrets about this, that, the other thing? The answer is yes, one. What is it? I should have transitioned sooner, right? And that's why you need to make this happen. So the next question is, how long is this all going to take? Well, I'll give you a good lawyer answer. That depends. It depends on what? Well, what's the first variable? How quickly you decide what you want to do when you grow up. It's the hardest darn thing, because, people come into our conference thinking there's nothing for them to do, and that's their big problem. There's no opportunities out there for physicians non-clinically. What we tell people is that when they leave, they're going to realize that their problem is not that there's nothing out there, but that there's so many options, you have to decide. And that is 100% true. There's a lot out there. You have to figure out what you want to do. The faster you do that, and I don't say you rush, but the faster you do that, the faster you're going to be able to make this transition. Is your family on board? It's tough, right? Mike tells about, his whole thing was everybody was so proud of him. He's Dr. Mike, he's Dr. Mike, he's Dr. Mike. Suddenly he's writing stuff for pharmaceutical companies. Wait a second, what happened to Dr. Mike? Right? My family was very proud. I was the first lawyer in the family, in my direct family. And, when I left after practicing only 2 years, they were like, what's up? But I educated them. I go, look, this is what's up. And let me tell you something. Let me tell you why it wasn't happy. And it's, if you want to get your family on board, you need two things. Number one, you need education, right? You need to be able to educate your family why you're not an idiot, why this makes sense, what all the facts and figures are in terms of growth, in terms of your happiness, in terms of, family time and everything else. That's number one. And the second thing you want to do to get your family on board is to just stand up for yourself and realize, like we talked about before, that you only get one life and you got to take care of yourself and you got to live it for you. You live it for you and your family, but you have to be a big part of this. So that's what I would suggest there. And the people that have their family on board, is when you can get the family on board, you're going to be more comfortable making the leap. How hard you work on your transition, we talked about this. It's the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out. There's no question about it. If you work at it 5 hours a week as opposed to 1 hour a week, you're going to probably get a result 5 hours faster. It is that simple. Your flexibility to move or commute. I get this all the time. People call us up. I'm so-and-so. I live in rural wherever. I can't leave. I need a job. Okay, well, you're kind of limiting yourself. You're limiting yourself to within 50 miles of wherever you are, or a job that's remote. Now, with COVID, I think that a lot of jobs are going to stay remote or stay remote optional. And I think that that's a great thing for families, right? My wife's job, she was partly remote. She's all remote now. They ain't never going back. Why? Because it's cheaper to have her. She's a lawyer. It's cheaper to have her at home. There's no overhead, right? So I think a lot of these jobs are going to stay. I think it's less of a concern, but a lot of these jobs you are going to have to be there in person. And it's good to be there in person because especially when you're starting a new field, you're starting a new career, it's the camaraderie, it's the collaboration, it's the learning, right? So the more flexible you are to move, I have some people that I deal with, I'm ready to go. I'll go wherever you want. I don't have a family. The family's on board. We don't like it here anyhow. We're ready to go. No problem. Okay. How much money you need to make in the short and the long term, your financial situation. All right. So Mike talked about this as well. I think it's important to reiterate money. So when I talk about non-clinical careers being more lucrative, obviously it depends. If you're a neurosurgeon, it's going to be tough to get a non-clinical career that's as lucrative of what you're doing now. Okay. But a lot of these jobs, you will make more day one than what you were doing in your medical practice, depending upon the deal and the situation that you had. Then there's also going to be the jobs like Mike's situation where you might not have made the same immediately, but your long-term growth is much better. And I think Mike has just an excellent example of that. And obviously your financial situation. So the more money you have saved and the more you can cut down on your expenses, and I love the way that Mike discussed that in negotiating with his bride, which I think is fun. Everybody's negotiating with their spouses over money. I think that's a very common thing. That's going to give you a lot more flexibility. So we get calls from people, hi, I need a non-clinical career. I need to make, $850,000, and I need to get a job in the next month. Can you help me? Answer, no, I can't. Forget it. Not happening. So you want the more flexibility you have, the faster it'll be. Your skills and what you bring to the table make them love you. Depends on who you are and what these people are looking for. If you're a key opinion leader and you don't mind going into pharma and you're in a hot area that they're developing therapeutics for, right? Well, you're going to have a lot of opportunity and you're going to have a lot of you'll have a lot of opportunity and you'll have a lot of negotiating power in terms of what it's going to take to get you on board because they want you, because they need you, right? So it depends upon the field that you're trying to get into and what your skills, what your resume is, how you built your resume in that area. We're going to talk about building a resume in a few minutes. Your job searching skills. We gave you some ideas on this earlier. We'll talk about some more in a bit. How do you network? How well do you network? How well do you research to find where these jobs are? The more jobs that are appropriate for you, the more swings you take at the plate, the more likely it is you're going to hit the ball. You got to get your at bats, And the better your job searching skills, the better you're going to be at it. And job searching skills is something that you can learn, and it's within your control. There's no question about it. Economic and industry conditions, right? If you're trying to get a job in high tech the day after the dot-com boom, probably not going to be so good. If you want to get a job in a private health insurance company the day after the government socializes medicine, probably not going to happen. Things might be tough for pharma. If the government puts price controls on pharma, they're definitely going to shed jobs. There's no question about it. Now, there's other things that will come with that. The drugs that they do have will be cheaper, certainly. So we don't know what the economic and industry conditions are going to be in your particular field. We just don't know. But these are all factors that will influence how long it's going to take you to make that successful career transition. All right, some additional thoughts on how long this is all going to take. So one of the most important things that you can do to assure a transition in the time frame that's optimal for you, or the best possible transition, is to make the time to devote to working on your transition. Okay? Now, at Seek, we work with a number of doctors who are interested in supplementing their income or in non-clinical careers. And a lot of them are very busy. They're very burnt out, and they need to get off the gerbil wheel. And we tell them how to do it, but things tend not to get done because, I don't have time. It's very, very difficult. So unfortunately, what we have to do with some of these people is have them give us a report of everything they do in the week, starting at the time you get up in the morning every day to the time that you go to bed. And we will work with them to show them you can cut this out. You can have somebody else do that for you. You don't need to be doing this at all. You guys get in a rut. People get in a rut. Everybody gets in a rut. And you don't critically think about how you are spending your time. So one of the most important things that you can do to free up your time is to really do that exercise. I was in a class once. There was a pain doctor who's a client of mine, great guy, and his bride was there with him. And this guy charged $800 an hour for expert witness work, which is a high figure, but not a crazy high figure. He was very good at what he did. And his wife had an MBA, was kind of his business manager. And I kept telling him, you should do this, you should do that. He's just, I have no time. I go, you want to bet? I go, let's go through what you do every day. Okay. And his wife was getting redder and redder and redder at all the things that he could be doing that he really didn't need to be doing. And he could have been focusing on his expert witness work and making a lot of money. So I think if you take a hard look at how you're spending your time, you may really be able to get past this by cutting out some things you really don't need to do. And so that's something I would recommend to you. Always remember that the more you put into the transition, the faster it will go. It is that simple. So I want you to be motivated. I want you to finish this program, and I want you to say, I'm going to do this every day. I'm going to do this every week. Okay? Now, let's talk about therapeutics. Working on your transition can be therapeutic. It make you happy. It can make you think about how things can be better. Think about you're not in the situation that you don't want to be in anymore for whatever reason. I can tell you from my experience, one of the jobs that I had practicing law, I despised after I kind of figured out what was going on. I absolutely despised my boss. Okay? And it was so bad that one day I came in, I used to get to work very, very early, and I walked past my boss's office, and he's in his office wearing pajamas and nothing more. I hated this guy. So I didn't even think anything of it. I didn't go in and ask him, why are you wearing pajamas? I just went right to my office. Now, everybody hated this guy because that's just the way it was. And I think there was some reasons for that. So around 7 o'clock in the morning, the other young lawyers that sat near me all started buzzing. What had happened was somebody had burnt down, his house had, our boss's house had burnt down the night before. And he came in the way he was dressed. He just got out, right? So I immediately thought, and everybody thought, oh, it must have been a former employee because everybody hated this guy. And it turned out that it was actually somebody who was mentally ill. It was more of a random act, not targeted at him. But that's how much I hated this job. So when I was there, and I was looking for other things, when I would send out a resume, when I would make a networking call, when I would do research on another job, when I would find a job that I might be interested in applying to, looking through the want ads and whatnot back in the day, it would make me feel better. You could feel your blood pressure going down. You could feel, you're thinking that there's greener pastures ahead. So I encourage you to do this work because it'll make you feel, if you're not happy where you are now with what you're doing now, working on this stuff working on your transition is something that'll really can be therapeutic. Finally, as we all know, there's many, many, many things in life we can't control. How other people are going to act, spreading a pandemic, the weather, world peace, politics, you name it. Okay, natural disasters, earthquakes, not within our control. But how hard you work at your transition, which will have a direct result on how fast you transition and how well you transition, that is within your control. So I encourage you to work hard at this. Take it seriously. You are all capable. You all got through medical school and undergraduate to get into medical school, and a lot of you got through residency. You guys are hard workers, and now you got to devote enough time to this process, and you will be great. You will be fine. Okay, here's a $64,000 question. Do you need to finish your training? This is for a lot of people in this audience, probably not the majority, but a lot of people. And the answer to that question is, I'll give you another great lawyer answer, that depends. The short answer is generally no. And as I would say here on the slide, heck no. You have inherent talents. And I can tell you statistically that a large percentage of our speakers at our conference every year, where we bring in people from various fields and whatnot, never finished their training. They have no boards. They did not finish their residency. They got out early. And these people are wildly successful. Okay, we have one that was the CEO of a huge biopharma company, senior executives in this field, in that field, very successful writers, people that work in consulting firms. Not a huge number, about 25% of our speakers each year have never finished their training, but it's a very significant number. All right. Now, some employers, like we talked about earlier, like at consulting firms, actually prefer doctors who haven't finished their training, depending upon what they're teaching you. Why? Because you don't have the blinders on yet. They can mold you to do things the way that they want it done, which I think can be helpful, because as doctors, you're kind of rigidly trained. What are employers looking for at the end of the day? Steve talked about this, or he will talk about this in the interviewing section. They want somebody that can get the job done. That's it. All right? And they really don't care about a piece of paper unless the piece of paper is necessary to get the job done. Now, some jobs, you need to have your boards. A lot of them, you need to have your boards. Okay? And if you have your boards, you're probably going to start at a job at a much higher level than if you don't, because it's harder to find those people. Okay? But, if you're getting in, so if you don't finish your training, you're probably going to start at a lower level, but that doesn't mean that you can't finish at a much higher level than somebody that came in to do a job that's more medically related than more management related. All right. What are we looking for as an employer? One of my friends is one of my friends from college. His father's very, very successful. He's in the news a lot. He says, we only hire PhDs at my company. PhDs, I guess, like a financial whiz. I guess, what kind of a PhD? Poor, hungry, and determined. Right? So if you're a young doctor and you're thinking about, do I need to finish my training? You're poor, hungry, and determined, probably. Right? And you're going to do very, very well at you'll probably do very well at whatever career you get in, because you have these inherent talents, your skills, your intelligence, your drive. And can you imagine how well you could do in any field that you got yourself into if you put those talents that you had, that work ethic, that intelligence, that dedication, if you put that towards your career at that new job instead of your residency where they're working you to death? Okay? So tons of doctors, very, very successful, never finished their training. And, the other thing to keep in mind is there's kind of more opportunity for you if you haven't finished your training in a certain sense, because you're not going to have these golden handcuffs. So a lot of doctors, once they're kind of out there and they're doing the work, they're making a certain salary, and they need to kind of get that salary or close to it to start, just to keep the lights on. And, when you're younger in your career and you're thinking what a resident makes, okay, or what a medical school student makes, nothing, and you're thinking about going into a different field, well, you know what? You're going to get a raise. You're not going to get a pay cut. And you got to play the long game. The long game is the entry level job is not the job you're going to have at the end of your career. The entry level job is so that you can show how great you are and you can produce. And if you can keep producing, you will get up that ladder. And how high you can go on the ladder, well, it depends upon the field that you're in, but it is what it is. Bet on yourself. All right? Now, okay, that said, if you have your boards, you're going to have easier transitions to a good, healthy salary. Easier, smoother. We need somebody to do utilization review. Bang, can you start next week? You're ready to go. Okay? Because we need somebody to do that. You can do disability reviews. If you need a medical license, if you need, the medical expertise of boards to do that job, you are never going to get a job like that at an insurance company. Okay? They need somebody with those medical skills and those medical credentials. But any other field, right, even within some of these same industries, not going to be a problem. Obviously, the other thing to keep in mind is keeping your options open, right? If you don't like the non-clinical careers, if for whatever reason you decide you want to go back to practicing medicine, having your boards is a good little insurance policy. So it's really up to you. But do you need to finish your training? Absolutely, positively not. Tons and tons of our speakers have been wildly successful and wildly happy in their careers without finishing their training, their residency training. So, that's just something for you to consider. So one thing you want to think about is, are you going to be ready to pull the trigger if a good opportunity presents itself to you? If your dream job offer was given to you today, would you be able to take it? So what I suggest is you're introspective and analytic about your current situation and develop a contingency plan if and when you get that job offer, right? So if you have an employment contract and there's notice provisions, well, if you're thinking about a non-clinical switch and you're planning many years out, right? So a lot of the people that come to our conference, they're not looking for today. They're looking for maybe 10 years from now, maybe 5 years from now. So when you re-up your employment contract or when you sign a new one, make sure that the notice provision isn't crazy. Because when an employer needs you, they want you to start right away typically. Because that's why they're hiring somebody, because they need help. And getting them to wait 3 months, 6 months for you might be a non-starter. There's things you could probably do about that. So be careful there. Now, if you're already stuck in a contract and it has a long term, maybe you line up an employment lawyer so that you're ready to go in terms of somebody can help you maybe get out of this if you got that job offer. Same thing with a lease, right? Maybe have a lawyer lined up. Maybe have a plan, at least some contingency plans for how am I going to sublease this? How am I get out from under without losing my shirt? A financial cushion. A financial cushion can be absolutely great. Mike talked about his salaries being this is what we need, and we could probably squeak by at this. And his first job, again, willing to bet on himself, his first job came in below all those numbers, and it worked out in the end. And did it ever, right? So you want to give yourself a little bit of a financial cushion if you need to while you're proving yourself in a new job, because the business world is a meritocracy. And if you can do a good job, the limits, the possibilities are endless for how far you can go. Home sales and moving. Do you have an agent lined up? Do you know a good agent? I'm speaking to you literally from my basement here, and I'm surrounded by junk. My kids are older. I got toys. I found my old college math textbooks down here. Eventually we're going to sell this house. So I've been working as we're stuck in the house during a pandemic, and I'm getting ready for the winter from hell that we're going to have here. I've been working every weekend on cleaning out a little bit here and a little bit there. So if you had to move to get to a new job, would you kind of be ready to do that? So all these are things that you might want to start thinking about now, so that if that job does land on you, what if a recruiter called you for whatever reason and they offered you this great job? Going to be tough to really respond properly unless you have some contingency plans to really be able to pull the trigger. So something to think about. All right, let's talk about job descriptions. Reading some of these job descriptions can be a little bit daunting because it's like, I don't got all that, right? Does that mean you still can't get that job? And the answer typically is absolutely not. A job description is typically a wish list written by somebody in, HR. And employers really get everything that's on their wish list. And when it comes to a job description, really the only thing that really matters to the employers we talked about before is, can you get the job done? Now there's some things on their wish list that are absolutely required, and there are other things that are probably more optional. At the end of the day, it's really, when from the employer's standpoint, it's really the Mick Jagger principle. You can't always get what you want, but if you try real hard, you get what you need. And as long as you have what they need, you don't necessarily have to have everything that they would want, right? And we see this time and time again. It happens in our business where we're advertising for people. When we've hired people, we almost never get everybody that checks every box on that list, but we always hire somebody who we are confident can get the job done. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't work out, right? Because people have to fit into the job, and you only learn so much from an interview. So that said, one of the most important things that you can do, and this is huge, and it's one of the most important things that should be on your action plan that you take care of later, is to work on filling the gaps in that resume. Resume building is the huge technique that you want to use. Put 8 asterisks next to that in your course book. You really want to build that resume to look great in the field that you're trying to get into once you identify what that field is. All right? Now, you want to go around HR. HR is a gatekeeper, and HR will do you no good whatsoever. The idea is to use networking to get around that. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. I can tell you a story. One of our clients and speakers was a neurologist, and he was trying to get a job at a disability insurance carrier. So he sent his resume in and got absolutely nowhere. So as he likes to tell the story, he was at a physical for the Navy Reserves, and he ran into another doctor that actually worked there, and he says, and the reason his CV got rejected, by the way, his resume, because he's a neurologist. They weren't asking for a neurologist. So he was at a physical for the Navy Reserves at an air base up in Maine, a naval base up in Maine. He ran to another doctor that worked there. He's like, hey, I sent my resume in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and I got nowhere. And he said you don't need a neurologist, but let me tell you why you do. So 2 days after that, he got a call from HR, come on in for an interview, and they hired him like a week later because the HR is not the decision maker. The decision maker is going to be the person that needs the work done at the company. And by going around HR, this doctor was able to get in front of the actual decision maker and to be able to demonstrate to the decision maker that, hey, I can get this job done. And that's kind of, rule number one when it comes to job hunting, is to get the heck around HR and get your resume in front of the person that's the decision maker. So if you're applying for a job in the federal government, yeah, USA jobs, that's fine. But what you want to do, if you're looking at the FDA, is you want to find out who the doctor is that's actually the decision maker to hire somebody that actually needs the help there. And you want to get your resume in the hands of that person directly, either from yourself or from somebody that you know that can make an introduction to get that in there. Because if I want to know if somebody can get the job done, as an employer, I'm going to take a personal reference. Hey, Jim, such and such a person. This person is great. You'll love working with him or her. I'm going to take that. So you want to get an ally on the inside of the organization, and that's how you beat the job description, HR, gatekeeper, computer, robot, whatever you want to call it. Get that ally, and that comes with research, hard work, and networking. And we're going to be talking about networking. Mike and Steve are going to both be talking about that. Don't be afraid to bet on yourself. This is what Mike did. It's okay to start lower than you might have hoped, in the confidence that you're going to be able to succeed. And if you really think about the skills and the talents that you have and the drive that you have, I think it's probably a good bet to bet on yourself. What you want to do is you want to give yourself the chance to prove to your employer that you can handle more and more responsibility. I think what Mike did is a perfect example. I can give you my own example. I am right now one of the owners of this company, Seek Inc., and I've been working here full time since 1996. You know how I started? I started doing one research assignment as a law clerk while I was still in law school. My boss and mentor, Steve Babitsky, hired me to do something. I had sent around resumes to every lawyer in the town where my family had a summer home on Cape Cod, desperate to find a summer job because I was in the middle of a huge recession in the early 90s. And a few lawyers wrote back, and one wrote back was, hey, give me a call when you're in town. Well, I'm not going to be in town. He says, okay, I have a job for you. I want you to help me write a couple of book chapters. And he kind of gave me this crazy assignment, and I did it without any BS, and he was happy with me. It's like, okay, well, call me when you're back down here again for the summer. And I did, and he gave me a summer job. He tested me out. It was a 10-week job, 10-week assignment. I helped him write a book. He was so happy with me, he made me co-author of the book. And he was happy with it. I did some more law clerk work my third year of law school. And when I got out, I actually turned down a job at the biggest law firm in Boston because they want me to do corporate work, and that ain't me. I wanted to be a litigator. Steve offered me a job full-time. I did that for a while. Then I went to practice law because I found a situation where I was a litigator and I could do what I really wanted to do. Tried that at a couple of firms. Didn't like it. Came back. Steve offered to make me a partner, essentially, if I could come back. Why? Because he wanted me to stay, right? And but the point was I was able to prove myself by just getting it at the lowest of low levels. I made $10 an hour as a law clerk. And I bet you guys will be able to prove yourselves too if you just bet on yourself. So, one thing you can do is gain experience in whatever industry it is. So if you want to work in pharma or biotech, get whatever job you can. And then you have experience now. And after a year, after 2 years, go to another company, right? And that's the way to gain faster promotions, is to move. One of my best friends, the best friend of my wedding, he retired at the age of 50, right? Because he was very, very good at what he did. He was very personable. He had great people skills. He was very, very hardworking, but he wasn't afraid to change jobs. So once he got in, he ended up being the president of a financial company, with international financial company, people all over the world reporting to him. He started off working part-time while he was still in college nights. It took him 7 years to get through college, answering the phone at a financial company from old ladies checking on their balances. That's how he started off. But he bet on himself. All right? And he ended up retiring at the age of 50 extremely successfully. Okay? One thing you can do is negotiate a probationary period. I did that at one of the law firms that I worked at. Nobody talked about the probation after about 2 months after I was there. They were very happy with me. Again, you're betting on yourself. What you want to do is get your foot in the door and then prove yourself. Contract work, that's kind of how I started off. It's a great way to test the waters, prove yourself, and also to demonstrate interest in the field, right? It's also a great way to build your resume depending upon what you're doing. So, if you're interested in getting into informatics, maybe do some contract work where you're doing training in electronic health records. If you're interested in getting into utilization review, health insurance, physician advisor, things like that, maybe do some part-time file review work at nights on weekends and stuff like that. So don't be afraid to bet on yourself. It's okay to start lower than you might have hoped. And these little part-time gigs like I had, one assignment basically changed my life because I took it seriously and I ran with it, right? And don't be afraid to bet on yourself. Networking. Networking is huge. We're going to have a whole talk on this. Steve's going to talk on it. Mike's going to talk on it. Steve's going to talk on it. I guess I'll have to talk on it just a little bit. As we discussed, the goal of networking is to outflank human resources and resume filters and bots and all this other stuff and get to the decision maker. The other goal is obviously just to learn and to build your knowledge base in a field. Because the more you learn about a field, the more you're going to find out whether this is something you would actually like, because you don't want to get into something that you wouldn't like. And the better that you'll be able to, present yourself at an interview, obviously. And ultimately, the better you'll be able to do the job if you did get into that field. So How do you want to network? LinkedIn is huge. I'm going to show you an example of that right after this slide. Family, friends, classmates, alumni network, colleagues. And the other thing I would say is identify and join industry-specific professional societies. We talked about that previously in my other talk. A lot of these buckets have societies of doctors that do that non-clinical work because there's so many doctors that get into it. I think the life insurance doctors, the American Academy of Insurance Medicine, I believe they call it, is the perfect example of that. When you think about undergraduate, when you think about people that you went to medical school with, colleagues, people have spouses, people have all kinds of things. I mean, I think you can be very, you can really see that you can get to know people where you need to know them. So one thing I absolutely positively want you to put 10 stars next to is figuring out how to use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an extremely powerful tool that you can use for networking. It's really off the charts. Nothing like this existed when I was getting out of law school in the early 1990s or whatnot. But you have the opportunity to take advantage of that. Now, one thing that I'm not showing you here on LinkedIn, but I did show you earlier, is LinkedIn actually has job postings, and LinkedIn makes a lot of their money from recruiters being paid to be able to search it so many times, because that's how recruiters will kind of do their thing. And obviously, matching up people with potential employees is how LinkedIn makes their money. So here, let's say you wanted to look for, you look up through various research that Gilead is developing drugs in your therapeutic area, whatever it is. Okay, and I just picked Gilead because they have the antiviral for COVID. So you can through the search function, you can search for companies, and I searched for Gilead Sciences. And what it will do is when LinkedIn spits out its results, it will rank people that you either are connected to on LinkedIn or that are connected to somebody that's connected to you. So here, this first person, who I don't know, he is connected to Rich Parker and and Dr. Adrian here. So Rich is a good friend of mine. He's been one of our clients. He's been speaking for us. Very, very good friend. If I needed an introduction to this gentleman in oncology, I just write Rich, hey, I want an introduction. Would you mind? And I'm sure Rich would be happy to do it. Adrian is a pharmaceutical doctor that I met and helped out a little bit this summer. I don't know him nearly as well as Rich. Okay. Down here, we have a senior medical director. He's a medical doctor. And one of our common connections is Heather Fork. Heather Fork is a wonderful top. She is a top coach for physicians. She runs the Doctor's Crossing, which is a fantastic blog, all kinds of free information. I'm sure Heather would be more than happy to introduce me. And she might actually say something nice about me because she's very nice. And she's forgiving. And then what do we have here? Ryan Muir. How do I know Ryan? She's a first-degree contact. And she's actually a lawyer over at Gilead, right? How do I know her? She was my law clerk. And having a law clerk is a little bit scary because most of the law clerks I've had, and Ryan is definitely in this category, are much smarter than me. So they're great things to have. So this is, and I had no idea Ryan was there until I did the search. She just happened to pop up as something as I was preparing this talk. I didn't know that that's where she ended up. Brilliant woman, fantastic woman, and wonderful tool to be able to get around HR, get information, and get your job search done. So I encourage you, as part of your to-do list of your action plan, is to learn LinkedIn and actually use the darn thing. Build your network and use it for networking purposes. All right, building your resume. Put as many stars as you can fit next to this in your course book. Once you've decided what you want to do, this should be your job number one, which can go in parallel to actually trying to find a job and researching. What you want to do is you want to demonstrate competence and interest in the field that you're targeting. So you want to show you want to give the employer that's looking at you things to sink their teeth into. They can say, oh, this person's interested in this. You know what? This person's actually pretty good at this. This person has some experience doing this. You're going to be way ahead of the competition. So we had a doctor. She was a She was a TV reporter. So she was the medical correspondent in a number of towns. She was very, very good at it. How did she get started? She hired on her own money a TV producer and a cameraman to start doing 2 or 3 sample stories that she could then show people. She could put it on her resume. I did this freelance thing. I did that freelance thing. And I have the tapes available. You can see how I'm going to do my work. So I'm not going to tell you how well I can do this. I'm going to show you, right? We had a doctor speak for us, a wonderful woman. She formerly a hospital CEO. How did she get started? She didn't do that right away. She was working in the health system, and they offered a job as a part-time medical director. Well, now if you're looking to get into administration, that's a great way to build your resume. Mike, he did some part-time writing. He was able to show that to the communication companies. Here's my work product, and it's on my resume. It's on my CV. That's demonstrating that I'm serious about this and that I have experience about this. You want to get into a pharma? What are they looking for? People that are familiar with the process, people that are familiar with how it works. So how are you going to do that? Get involved on the provider side in clinical trials. Become a principal investigator. Become a sub-investigator. Think strategically. How am I going to be able to do this stuff? Build that resume. Make yourself stand out from the competition and demonstrate to these people that you're really interested in this field, because you wouldn't go do this stuff unless you were. We talked about disability reviews, working for an insurance company, doing disability work. Try to do that work on a contract basis. Shows that you're interested, shows that you can do it. You might be able to share, redacted out some of your work product to demonstrate, hey, this is how I should do it. Okay. Now, the other thing that this does for you is that you figure out if you like it or not. So you take a job for a part-time medical director at your local hospital. Maybe you hate it. Maybe you don't want to do that. So you can test the waters a little bit, right? Anybody that demonstrates leadership is going to stand out to an employer. What I mean is people that aren't afraid to take on a lot of work. So my kid's applying to college right now, and one of the things that they have in the Common App, he's a senior, is, what are your extracurricular activities? Do they really care what particular club that you're in? No. What they're looking for is people that can walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. People that aren't complaining, I'm too busy, I can't do that, I can't do this. People that are going to be successful because they can manage a lot of things at once. People that have some ambition and aren't just going to do the bare minimum. And by demonstrating leadership, being on this committee, being on that committee, being active in your community, whatever it is, I think you're making a positive message to potential employers, and I think you're building your resume. The other thing that you can do to both learn and to demonstrate interest in a field is join the professional societies. So if you're interested in insurance medicine, working for life insurance medicine, working at a life insurance company, join the American Academy of Insurance Medicine, right? You're demonstrating, hey, I am serious about this. This just isn't a whim, because if you're serious about it, you're much more likely to do a good job, and you're much more likely to be happy, and you're much more likely to stick around, because they don't want to hire you. You'd be miserable. They got to replace you in 6 months. Nobody wants to do that. So I can't say strongly enough that once you figure out the field or the fields that you want to target, you want to really think about, how am I going to build my resume in this field so I've got some ammunition, I've got something that I can use for talking points, and this things on my resume that are going to stand out amongst the competition. Build that resume. Job number 1. All right, let's talk about going back to school, which is, I have seen as the absolute knee-jerk reaction that doctors who are more highly educated than anybody in our society have often. And unlike building your resume, and unlike networking, which is at the top of the list, and I want you to put 10 stars next to it, this is probably something I would have at the absolute back of the list, the bottom of the list, and be very, very careful about this. So going back to school could actually be helpful. I mean, obviously it could be helpful depending upon what you want to get into. It could be instrumental and absolutely required, right? So if you want to be a lawyer, you want to be a trial lawyer, or a patent lawyer, or a corporate lawyer, or whatever it is, a medical malpractice lawyer, you got to go to law school. No question about it. You want to get into public health, MPH is probably going to be required, right? Could be helpful, right? We talk about helpful. You want to get into informatics? They have certificate programs in that. You want to get into medical writing? They have certificate programs in that. But from an employer standpoint, I don't really give a damn about your piece of paper. I want to know, can you do the job? You legally can't do the job as a lawyer without a license. You got to go to law school. Can you do that job? I would much rather have you send me writing samples or take a writing test than have some certificate. Although you might learn a lot in that certificate. So, what are the problems with going back to school? My God, it's expensive. Or like I said, my kid's going to start college next year. The college that he's looking at, it's $78,000 a year. That's expensive, right? And, you got a lot going on. Time consuming. It's ridiculously time consuming if you're taking the degree online. Okay? Now, what are some of the benefits? Obviously, it shows if you're getting education in the area, it shows that you're serious about it. But are you going to get your money's worth? Is it worth the real absolute cost? So I would talk to people in the field and really get some frank advice about it. And typically, like if you're talking about an MBA or something like that, I wouldn't start working on that until you actually made the transition. Because what they teach you in an MBA may have nothing whatsoever to do with the job that you're doing. If you're working for a health insurance company doing utilization review, an MBA has nothing to do with that. It's 3 letters. It's kind of interesting. But how is that going to help you determine whether or not somebody should get Botox for their migraines? How is that going to help you determine whether or not somebody, when they're teaching you operations research and economics and all these other things, how's that going to help you determining how long somebody can stay in the hospital? And the answer is it's not. Okay. Now, if you want to run to manage the health insurance company or be a CEO of a hospital, an MBA could be extremely helpful. But think about the job that you're doing. If you're working for a life insurance company, you're figuring out how long people are going to live. Is an MBA going to help you? Probably not. They have board certification in insurance medicine. That's going to help you, and that may be required for some of these jobs. So you really want to think very, very carefully about this before you do the doctor knee-jerk reaction and go back to school. Probably on the bottom of the list, but depending upon the field, it might start inching up there. Really understand what you're going to be doing in the job and, how, if at all, this credential will help you. And, I much rather have you gain that experience through lower paid or volunteer work even in your hospital, say, you want to learn about informatics or whatever it is, than paying to go to school. But depending upon the program, it may be good. Just don't give me that knee-jerk reaction. More school, more school, more school. So many doctors make that mistake, and it's an expensive and time-consuming mistake. Okay, just to follow up, consider formal degree alternatives. Can you get the knowledge that you need to get the job done faster, easier, cheaper than earning a formal degree? And a lot of times you can get a lot of knowledge for a lot cheaper than going through the years of training to get a piece of paper that you have 2 more letters next to your name. So interning to gain experience, huge, right? Anything that you can do to, you want to work on clinical trials to figure out what, how the clinical trial process works. You want to do part-time file review work, part-time utilization review work. Try to gain experience in that field. Volunteering for implementation projects of EHR in your healthcare system. All different examples of gaining experience in that field. Doing some writing on the side to show that you can be a good writer. Okay? These are the things that that employers will look at and say, hey, this person could do the job because I've seen them do the job. Another thing that you can do, which is a lot cheaper than going back to school, is read the relevant trade publications. A lot of these areas have their own trade magazines and trade journals and whatnot. Read it. Get up to speed. You guys are smart. You guys can figure this stuff out. There may be free courses online. My kid takes Khan Academy. Unbelievable. And a final bit of advice, if you're looking about getting into the business world, read the Wall Street Journal. Unbelievable reporting, and you really get a sense as to how businesses work and, what are the cutting edge issues if you read the journal. Okay, so those are some ideas, and all of this knowledge will help you potentially in your job, potentially, make you look better, but it'll certainly help you when you're interviewing because you're going to be able to talk the talk, and you'll have some talking points to talk about. And I know Steve's going to talk about interviewing in a few minutes, a little later today. Mentoring. I think Mike's example was a fantastic one, where a mentor was instrumental in Mike being able to successfully transition, and he had a relative do it. I think mentoring can be wonderful. A mentor like Mike did can keep you focused, can give you deadlines, can give you advice, can help you from making poor choices, And, who is successful? I mean, if you think about people that are successful, like in the sports world, they all have coaches, right? Get yourself a coach, get yourself a mentor, at least consider that. Sometimes you don't have to pay for it. Mike's mentor did it for free. I mentor people for free all the time. I enjoy doing it. I love doing it. People want to help. People want to spread the wealth. So you can think of friends, relatives, colleagues. There's people in the field. A lot of people would be happy to do it. But your other option is, you're looking at millions of dollars at stake here because you're looking at your career and you're also looking at your happiness. So with all that much at stake, would it be worth it potentially to actually pay somebody to mentor you? And the answer is yeah, probably. Get yourself a coach. Every year we have a bunch of coaches come and mentor people for free at our conference, and then a lot of these doctors will sign up for mentoring and coaching after the conference. Okay, and almost universally, the people are very, very happy they get the mentoring because it gives them guidance, it gives them deadlines, it gives them help, and it's okay to ask for help. And when you think about a cost benefit analysis, even if you have to pay for the mentoring, the benefit could be off the charts, and the cost probably isn't going to be that much in the grand scheme of things. So mentoring worked great for Mike. It can work great for you. It's definitely something to consider on your action plan, whether you should get yourself a mentor and then how you're going to find that person. All right, let's talk about your communication skills and your soft skills, your people skills. I did an analysis many years ago, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, and I looked at hundreds of want ads or job descriptions for non-clinical physicians. And without a doubt, the most commonly required skills are the ability to speak and write and work in teams. Those three kind of soft skills are at the top of are the most common thing that that employers are looking for. As a matter of fact, when they're interviewing you, that's a lot of what they're testing. Are you likable? Can you communicate? Do you listen? It's not all about you. Are you actually listening to us? Because it's important to find people that can listen, right? And, unlike the weather, or unlike where you went to school, right? Or unlike how tall you are, your communication skills and your people skills and your are things that you can actually change. So one thing that I would suggest, maybe 2 or 3 stars next to this one, is work on improving your communication skills, your soft skills, your people skills, and being able to demonstrate that and building talking points for your resume and for your interview on that. So a lot of times as a medical doctor, when you're working non-clinically, your job is to teach non-medical people medicine. You got to interface with the people that are non-medical and kind of bridge that gap. If you can demonstrate in your resume and in your interview that you can do those things, it's going to help you. So teach and lecture. I train expert witnesses all the time. I go, listen, you want to get better at this? An expert witness is in essence a teacher that's answering questions. So teach. You're going to have to explain things to people that aren't experts in your field, number one, and you're going to have to answer questions from very smart people that you don't know what the question is going to be before they get it. It's great practice. But you can also use the teaching to demonstrate, if you do a lot of teaching, it's on your resume, and your job requires teaching other people in your company, it's right there on the resume. Being an expert witness is a fantastic thing. It's also good for sometimes the business world, because sometimes you get questions that aren't that nice, and you get very tough questions from either colleagues or bosses or clients or customers or whatnot. It shows that you're tough. Shows that you have courage under fire, as they say. But it's at the end of the day, an expert witness is a teacher, and you're explaining medicine. You're there to teach the jury. You're there to explain medicine to 12 people that weren't smart enough to get out of jury duties. Is the way I kind of explain it. You want to become a better writer? Write. This is what Mike did. He had some writing. He could show it to people. But if you want to show that you're a contributor to this particular journal, you've developed this handbook at your employer, whatever it is, you are building that resume, and more importantly, you're building your skills to write. Because I got to tell you, as somebody that works with expert witnesses a lot, the smartest people as a group that I tend to work with are the medical doctors. No question about it. They're also, as a group, probably the worst writers. A lot of doctors are atrocious writers. Atrocious. I mean, it looks like, my daughter in 10th grade could write better. No question about it. So a lot of you guys definitely need work on that. And believe me, it's within your skills to become a better writer. The better you speak, the more employable you're going to be. And once you get into that job, the higher you're going to go. no question about it, and this is within your control. Toastmasters is a club that you can join. Teaches you how to present in public. People have done wildly well with that. We had one speaker for us, and she was a former attendee, and she wanted to become a public and motivational speaker, and she's absolutely fantastic. I love this woman to death. And she started off at Toastmasters. She got really good at it. She started winning competitions, and now she's a professional speaker, and she gets like, $10,000-$15,000 for a talk. Fantastic woman, and that's how she helped train herself through Toastmasters. Work on committees. Why? It shows you can get along with people, right? Try to get some leadership roles in your organization, even if you don't get paid with them. Why? It shows that you got ambition, and it shows that you can manage these, manage working in teams, which when you get into the business world, to a greater or lesser extent, depending upon what you do, you're going to have to work in teams, and the people that can do that well are the people that are going to succeed, and it's going to be the people that they're looking for. So when they ask you, can you work in teams? Sure. Let me give you 3 examples of that, because I've done this. I'm building the resume. I have examples of it. Okay? So get experience managing people and working in teams, and it'll make you better at it, and it'll give you something to talk about in your interview, and it'll give you something to put down on your resume. All right, recruiters. I'm not going to spend a lot of time about recruiters. Why? Because the odds are you're not going to be recruited for an entry-level position unless you're a big cheese, you're a key opinion leader, or you have some very, very special skills and experience. That said, we're not just going to forget about this. What are we going to do? We're going to make sure that you can get found by recruiters, and that these days typically means making sure your LinkedIn profile, is optimized. So a recruiter can't contact you unless they can find you, and how they're going to find you is probably going to be in LinkedIn. So you want to have a professional photo. You want to have a relevant tagline for what you are. Okay, maybe it's your specialty, maybe it's a niche that you have, maybe it's a special experience that you have. You want to have contact information in your summary. Contact me at, because people can't see your contact information in LinkedIn. You can give your cell phone, you can give your email address, and then you want to show, you want to maintain your resume on, your profile, we'll call it, on LinkedIn with the same amount of care that you would your regular CV. So, you want to have a nice, robust listing on LinkedIn. And I think, obviously this is going to be helpful as well when you're interviewing, when you're networking, so people can connect with you, people can see what the heck's going on. So definitely put a few stars next to this. Make sure your LinkedIn program is ready to go. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but a photo, make sure it's a professional photo. No selfies, okay? No picture with you with a bow tie on because you took it at your kid's wedding, right? You were very proud of that. No picture of you holding up a fish. A professional photo. Now, if you do get contacted by a recruiter and you're not interested in the job, be nice to them, because they're not going to call you back for a job you might be interested in when unless you're nice to them. Get back to them, be polite, offer to hook them up with other people, and recruiters like people that are cooperative and interested in professionals, because they're not going to send somebody who's a jerk out to an interview. Is too risky for them, and it could blow back in their face. So, bottom line, make sure that LinkedIn profile is up to date. Put 3 or 4 stars next to that. It should be part of your action plan. All right, and obviously you want to look for jobs. You want to hunt for jobs. So, different ideas that you can do with this. Number one is you want to identify employers to network with. We gave you some examples of that and figure out who the employers are in the field that are near you. I thought what Mike did was great. He figured out every medical communications company within 100 miles of where he lived in Pennsylvania. I thought that was fantastic, right? Very methodical, perfect example of what to do. You want to do the same thing. You want to kind of get a hit list of employers that you want to network with. And ideally what you want to do is, obviously you want to look for job postings, and we'll talk about that. But you want to find jobs before they're even posted. So we get hired all the time for contract work where we come in to teach classes where the federal government will hire us. And I've trained the FBI, I've trained the IRS, I've trained the Securities Exchange Commission. We just got hired last month. We just trained the FDA. It goes on and on, the Department of Defense. And typically the way it works is this. The FAA is they'll say, this is what we want you to do. How much is it going to be? We make a deal. We do this. We do that. Said, can can we finalize the date? No, no, we have to post this now. Well, they already hired us, basically. So by law, they have to post the job, right? They have to go through their procedures, but they already know that the fix is in. They're hiring us, okay? Because there's all kinds of ways around that. So ideally, what you want to do with a job posting is get the job before it's even posted, or get the inside track. So if you're doing your networking well, you may know, oh, they're going to be hiring somebody in the therapeutic area of whatever at this biotech company. And you, through your networking, were introduced to the people that's actually in charge of that hiring. Okay? This is how my wife got her last job, right? She was she was laid off in the financial recession. She was in the financial crisis. She's a financial services lawyer, and a woman that she'd worked with at the law firm and back at the other company. She started doing contract work for her. And they'd say, "Hey, we're gonna have a position coming open. Blah blah blah." They had to advertise for it, but the fix was in. She was gonna get it because they knew she could do the job. They liked her. She'd proven herself. She was doing contract work. She's worked with that company before. So ideally, you want to get to the job before it's even posted. Create that wish list of employers, just like Mike did. It's also good to look for these job postings and to understand what the job titles can be, which can help you in finding jobs at other companies, and to understand what these people do and what the requirements are. They're going to be all kinds of talking points. A lot of these job sites, like Indeed.com, which is probably one of the best, have can have an update sent to you every day with the new jobs in the field. And you can put certain parameters in there and they can spit them out to you. So, the computers are a wonderful thing to have, to be able to look for the jobs. Sometimes it gets a little bit overwhelming, but, you're going to have to look for jobs, and this is just some advice and some tips that I have for you. So for our biggest takeaways from this talk, 2 of them, things that we already talked about. Number 1, we talked about all the speakers that I've had, and I've had hundreds of them over the years, speak at our Non-Clinical Careers for Physicians conference. You ask them their biggest regret, and what do they say? Do you have any regrets? Yes. What's your biggest regret? I should have done this sooner. I should have transitioned sooner. Right? And how does this fit in? It's all here. Goya, get off your ass. Make this happen. You want to transition sooner? Start doing it. Start using the techniques that we've been talking about here. Get your action plan going and execute that action plan. This is not rocket science. If you take your job search and your transition seriously, like you do your patient care, like you did your residency, like you did your medical school, you are very likely to have success in your transition, and you're likely, and if you take your new career seriously, like you did your residency, like you did your patients and whatnot, you're likely to be very successful at it. And hopefully you're likely to be very happy at it. So, if you remember anything else from my talk, it is Goya. And thank you for listening.